Supple up! This is Pupple Up, and welcome to another tutorial. Today, as it has been recently requested, I will be doing a tutorial on how I rig hair and get it ready for use in Honey Select as an accessory. The reason why it's an accessory as opposed to a hair itself is because the hair naming conventions for the bones in Honey Select are a little beyond me at this point. I still have to learn that, but once I have, don't worry, I'll be making a tutorial on that too. One of you just might need to remind me for it. In any case, we've got our setup here. I've already fitted the mesh to the head, which, if you've noticed, I've beautified our head here. Something you'll notice is that the head is actually at the origin in a pretty particular way. This is specifically my hair fitting head. Where it is so that when I apply everything and set the hair to having the application at the origin is that way. That's where the bone is for hair and head accessories to show up correctly when you put them into the game. So if you use the template that I'm using, which I'm sure if it's requested, I will make it available and ask the other modders or ask the moderators to make it available. I actually got this particular one from someone else, I believe, gave this head to me. If I remember, I will put and credit them in my description below. But for now, we have our hair on our head, and we are good to go and start. This particular tutorial especially will focus on rigging. All of the hairs that I work with from where I get them start out as .objs, which don't have any armature data to them whatsoever. So I have to actually build the rig entirely myself. So first things first, I have my hair in my particular collection. This particular mesh only has two parts, which is the bun and the short hair. I will be actually breaking that up, this especially. You'll find out why that's more important in the weight painting step. But for now, we're in object mode, which is exactly where we want to be. And we are just going to start out adding an armature. Yes, a fresh armature. Where did this add? No, we don't want that here. We want that inside of our collection with our hair itself. But as you notice, when you start with a bone, it's not very pretty. We're going to change that real quick. Going down to our object data properties down here, looks like a little dancing person, and we are going to set display as stick. I prefer using display as stick because I find just that it doesn't get in the way when I'm doing the weight painting step, but it's still clear enough that you know exactly what the bone is. There are other ways. The B-bone, envelope, wire. Wire I feel isn't obvious enough. So I stick to stick. So first thing first, we want to scale this sucker way down so that it's actually inside of our little head area here. Another thing that I find really helps is that if you set the viewport display to in front, if you notice now, no matter what angle we are looking at, we actually can see it. I'm gonna scroll this down a little bit more and then move it so that it's central to our hair here. This bone is the all-important start to our armature, so we are going to call this very first bone our root. When we resize the hair as an accessory in case someone's using an alternate type of head or what have you, the root bone is going to be what all the other bones are connected to so that it resizes and whatnot correctly. From here, we can actually move into our edit mode. And one of the things that we're going to be using a lot is the extrude option. No, it doesn't mean it's extra rude. It's like you're extruding pasta through a pasta shaper. It's more like that. So the first bone that I kind of want to make is I'm actually going to make a single bone connected. We're gonna start out by extruding here and then extruding like this. Actually, let me show you. If you really want to make your armature clean, make sure that you're only seeing it from like one specific axis view by using your little axis control up here. So I'm going to make a single bone for the bun. That way, when we add dynamic bones, the bun will just kind of wiggle as one object, as it would in real life. If you notice, hey pup, but you've added 2 bones. Yeah, we can actually delete this bone entirely. We have to double click for it, and as you can see, there is a connected relationship between these 2 bones, but there's no longer the unnecessary bone between them. Whoa. Yeah, when you exit out of your mode, that's based off of just the one view, it can mess your camera up a little bit. You might also be asking me, pup, you can zoom in really far to your mesh without it disappearing weirdly. That's actually an option up here in view, I believe. You want to drag your clip start down till it's really, really close, so you won't clip through unless you're really, really close, which when you're working with things close up, I find that that's really helpful to bring down. So we're going to actually, let's pause on the armature here and hide it, and hide our bun as well. Because I don't know how many pieces we need yet. Because we need to figure out how many pieces we're cutting up our mesh into here. So let's start there. So first things first, this scalp area here, we're probably not going to do much, if any. We're only going to really assign that to the root bone. So let's, and I find it easier for this particular thing, particular way of doing is I select faces. So we're going to shift click a couple things in this mesh region and Control L. That didn't give us quite enough. So let's, oop, don't want that one, that one. Let's shift click one vertex for pretty much every part of this mesh that we want. Move around the back do that again until we have everything highlighted. Another easy way to do it in the meantime is we can actually hide the parts that we've already selected using H. That way we can also maybe drag Control L, H. Don't want that. You gotta be careful making sure we're only selecting parts that we want to separate out, because in the end we will be using the separate by selection option. So shift click, let's hide those, make sure, as we can see, there's still a part here that we want to separate out. And if we look around, I want to say that's all of that, the part of the hair that comes up to be part of the bun. So let us go to Mesh, Show Hide, Reveal Hidden, and then we can go Mesh, Separate, or just use the letter P on our keyboard, and then Separate by Selection. So we have that. Let's start naming pieces. This is just the bun. I'm gonna call this part Scalp. We can hide that. So back to edit mode, and we'll just piece this out. So usually I separate the bangs into 3 distinct chunks. Each one of them is going to end up with its own bone chain. So let's start figuring out from this side, actually. So I know I mentioned I use Control L. I didn't really explain what it does. It selects everything that's linked to the vertex, the edge, or the face that you select. Which, when you want to separate strands of hair, or say you're working with a room and you want to select just one part of the furniture, this is going to be the option you want to use to make sure that you're getting all of the connected pieces. Now, sometimes this doesn't always work if the person who created the mesh is using what's called islands. But there are ways to get around that just by making sure that you bring everything into its own sub-mesh. So we're going to separate this by selection again. I just used my P shortcut. So this is going to be bangs. And if we remember, this is actually the right. No. This is the right or the left part of the mesh, if we're talking about from the person's perspective. I'm horrible with right and left. I am so sorry. This would be the left. So we're going to just call it bangs L. And then hide it because we've separated it. We don't need it anymore. Back to edit mode. Sorry about that, guys. You found out one of my secrets. I am horrible at determining what's right and what's left. I actually have to in real life, put my fingers up to do the L for left thing. I'm pathetic. Now let's separate out what will become our bangs. C for center. Oop. So Control L. That only left us with one part that wasn't. So, actually, we have a little bit over here that was an island. Don't worry, we'll fix that. That's why I honestly should have used H for hide. So let's P, separate selection. Be bangs C. Let's hide that, unhide this. Actually, no, we probably should hide it or else we'll miss this little bit here. Into edit mode. Control L. No, those are, see, this is what I mean when I say islands. So we're actually gonna have to manually click both, separate by selection, and we're going to click them first, and then, no, we're gonna click bangs L first, then we are going to control click our little island here, and in object mode, control J. Oh, no, I should have, we're just gonna rename them bangs L. And now if we hide that, you'll notice our little stragglers, our island here, is now part of bangs L. That way, like with Ohana, nothing gets left behind. So now back into edit mode, we're gonna isolate the rest of our bangs here by clicking the correct things, not the incorrect things. Control L. Now, gotta make sure we're not leaving any stragglers. L. We're gonna H to hide. And sure enough, there was something I almost missed. To hide again, and now it looks this time that there isn't any islands on that side that I will be missing, so we're going to unhide and separate by selection again, and this will then be bangs R. This will leave us with the meat of our hair here, which actually, if you notice on the inside, has several different layers. Now, there are a couple ways to do this. The hair that I did just before this was incredibly fluffy and had tons of layers, so I actually gave each layer its own bone chain, having the shorter layers move more easily and freely than the lower layers. Since they were shorter, you know, short hair moves easier than long hair. We don't nearly have the kind of feathered effect on this, so I don't think we'll be using that technique for this. But if you have a hair that happens to be feathery and have a lot of layers, that is something you can do, is that you can isolate not only by the section of the hair, but also by the layers themselves. It does require more time and attention, but can have a really cool effect in the end if you're willing to put in the effort. As with anything, the more effort that you put into it, the better your final outcome is going to be. Everything that we do in any kind of art, whether it be 2D or 3D, is always a labor of love. As for this, I think I'm going to separate it first into just major left and right sections, and then a back section, and have those be what our independent items are. If it was longer, I might separate it a little differently, but this is short hair, so we're going to keep it simple. Because sometimes all you have to do is the KISS method. You keep it stupid simple. Let's start, and since we're grabbing a lot more in one area now, we can actually use our box select. So, is that enough? Oh, I have to start over. You notice, we accidentally selected all the way over here, which is something we do not want. So let's try that again. Let's actually try it like this. That way we're not selecting anything on the opposite side of the mesh. Because sometimes our select tools do that. You just kind of want to figure out what feels right for you to be approximately where you want this to stop. Actually, I think I'm gonna separate this into quarters now that I think of it, and have a right 1 and a right 2, and then a left 1 and a left 2. And this strand will kind of delineate where I want my left 1 to end. So we want to make sure we're getting everything closer to us using our hide method again. See, there are some islands here, and we want to make sure we're getting our islands. Control L, hide. And now, do we have it where it's nice clean? Yeah, that's a nice clean break. So we are going to unhide all of the stuff that we hid and separate selection. This is gonna be our back L1. And we'll just keep moving around in a counterclockwise here. So let's figure out. And it does become a little bit easier when you've got, you know, obviously I've got many meshes hidden by now, because they've already been separated out. It becomes easier to continue to separate out, because you can use your box select a little bit more freely. Control L. I don't like what that is. We're gonna look at it from behind now. That's about the halfway point. So let's hide, pick up our stragglers that we didn't see before. Little island here. Now that that's selected, though, I'm pretty sure I can unhide the rest of it and it'll all be selected at once. So let's show hide, reveal hidden, separate by selection. And that'll be our back L2. Now at this point we can kind of just cut this in half, figure out where a good halfway point is. Yeah, about there. Gonna use control to unselect the parts that we... Nope, that did not work. Let's just start over. Control L, H, everything's in here. Control L, H, Control L, H. And if it's easier to do it like I just did it there, where it was just like you do it a couple times and keep hiding until you make sure that you get everything, that's a valid way to do it too. So now that we've got that part separated out, let's Alt H is actually for our unhide. That's our shortcut. H is just hide, so I'm not sure if I remembered to mention that earlier. I will make sure I'm mentioning it now. So yeah, let's P by selection, rename that our back R2, because that's further back than what remains is our back R1. Now that we have all the pieces, as I unhide them, we can really get into the meat of making the armature. So let's unhide our armature now and go back into edit mode. So we are going to, and here's some interesting things. So we're gonna extrude just twice more from the root, making bone chains that going to have these bones that we're going to delete. So I like to make 2 bones for my bangs, and then this one we're going to delete, and it asks you for a confirmation to make sure that you want to delete it. On average, I go between 4 and 5 bone chains for the length of a hair, but this one's short, so I think I'm going to only make a bone chain of 1, 2, 3, and that'll be good for us. Now, you may be saying, Pup, you only have 1 bone chain for your whole bangs and 1 bone chain for your whole back of your hair, but we've separated the hair into 4 parts for the back and 3 parts for the front. Well, that's because I cheat. Once I have the parts that I want, I just duplicate them. And notice they're connected to our root bone in the same exact way that our original bone chain is, even though we've still deleted the bone that connected to them. So I'm going to duplicate this twice, and then we're going to use the rotate tool to kind of get them into place so that they are where our bang sections are that they'll be attached to. So back to our armature, back to edit mode, and we're going to rotate and move this sucker. Now, sometimes when I'm in this mode, if you notice, I have things set to where it's textured in the viewport. If you want to untexture it, I believe there is a way that you can set the color to random, so that every piece that you've now separated out is a different color. If that, you know, aside from these two, but you can still see where it's delineated. That can help you place your bones a little bit more easily. Just, you know, you find tips and tricks, and that's in this menu, by the way. This little drop-down menu, it actually drops up because there's no room for it to drop down. You can also set it to flat shading. I prefer matte cap in this case because it still shows you the shading on the individual strands. There's also, if you happen to have something colored by vertex, colored by material, the texture can actually be seen in this mode if you use that particular way. We'll just set it to random for now. That way we can adjust our bone chains to be sort of central to the hair parts that will need them. I'm gonna rotate this just a little bit and then duplicate it over here, rotate it, move it to where it's more central to the hair it will be parented to. Gonna duplicate it again. Move it over here. Rotate it accordingly. Your armature isn't always going to be super clean. Some armatures just end up cleaner than others. But don't worry about your armature looking like the best in the world. Having everything, super where it looks most right. As long as they're more or less in the areas that they should be, you're doing a good job. And yeah, using the trick up here with the 6-axis control really does help when you're setting up the armature. So I've got my armature here. I've got all the bone chains that I want. Now we're going to name them. Right now they're all just named various things on root. So this one's the bun bone. I'm just going to call it bun. Any of you who know me and that I have a rabbit in real life, calling something a bun bone might entertain you a little bit. Here is bangs C. We're going to call that bangs C1 because what's right underneath it is going to be bangs C2. Make sure that you're numbering with the chains. This one is our back L2, so this is going to be back L2.1, then back L2.2, and back L2.3. Because we are naming the bones and doing the weight painting and everything by hand, keeping the bone names to where they are relatively short is actually really important because we're going to have to write them by hand in the vertex groups section when we get to weight painting. So this is our bangs R1 and R2. Over here, bangs L1, bangs L2. This is one of the more tedious parts of the process. Is back, that's R2.1. Back R2.3. You notice sometimes my fingers get a little excited and they try and skip things. 1.1, back R1.2. It doesn't help that my fingers are very cold now, and that makes it very easy to screw up typing. Haha, I put a comma here. That would have made me very confused come to weight painting time. Okay, so with that, we actually have our whole armature made. So if you've gotten to this point of the tutorial, you just made an armature. How awesome is that? You made bones from nothing. Of course, an armature is no use without weight paint. So, without further ado, let's start working on that. we're going to go back to just the color of the material because that's going to make our weight paint way easier to see. So this is not going to be like my other weight paint tutorial because we don't have a body that we're basing the paints off of. We have to start the paints from scratch. Which, I know, that sounds so scary. I promise you, it's not. So, first things first, the easiest part to weight paint is going to be our scalp, because it's only going to have one vertex group. And that is our root. The scalp isn't gonna wiggle. It's not gonna go anywhere. So we can just go straight to weight paint mode. And yes, auto normalize. I will remind you to set your 0 weights to active, because if you do none, it just makes everything blue, and that's confusing because blue could be really low weight paint. Active means black means no weight paint. So if we don't want where there isn't weight paint to be confusing, this is the setting that we want. And we're just gonna straight up just draw all over this. It only has the one weight paint. Auto normalize. We don't care about any other weight paint. Oh, there is one thing that we forgot to do though, that I forgot to do. We need to add the armature deform modifier and make sure that it's set up to our current armature. Otherwise it doesn't know which bones it's looking at. So let's go through all of our things and make sure and you can click on any bone in the armature, and it will make sure to set the correct armature once you use the little dropper button. So let's go through and make sure we're doing that. See, even I forget steps sometimes. That's actually why I have a notebook that is by my workspace that has all the parts and things that I thought I might forget, or little minutiae that, you know, might be skipped over. I made sure to go through and wrote down everything that I was like, nah, this is difficult. This is gonna give me issues. So now if you notice, all of our meshes have the little wrench icon with them. That means that they are now connected to the armature in the way that we want. So we can go back to our object data properties menu here, which is the green one that looks like an upside down triangle made of squares. And now when I blur, because auto normalize is selected, it's going to turn red, which means it's 100% weight painted to the root bone. So I'm actually going to hide the scalp now that we're going to go do the bun. The bun only will have 2 weight paints. The root and what we called our bun bone. And we want to make sure that when we're doing the vertex groups, we're adding the plus to add however many vertex groups we need on that particular item, and then naming them exactly what we named them in the hierarchy. If we don't, the program is not going to know which bone you mean, and it's going to screw up the weight paint. So, the base of the bun isn't gonna go anywhere. So, we're going to go here and make sure that we see our wireframe, and we are going to weight paint just the base of the bun. We're actually going to turn off auto normalize and make sure that we're only about half the weight. I usually use auto normalize when I go on the blur stage. You'll see that. So we're going to weight paint the bottom of the bun, all over the bottom of the bun. Make sure it's not on the top. I'm gonna go around the whole thing and weight paint it to the root bone. Then we're gonna select the bun bone, and it's going to overlap just a little bit, but we wanna make sure we don't get that face that we won't want to move. We're gonna weight paint the whole rest of the bun to the bun bone. Try and say that like 6 times fast or something. Okay. So now we have our 2 weight paints, and I'm actually gonna go back to the root bone. Now we're gonna click auto normalize and use our blur tool. If you notice, this now gives us a gradient between the bottom of the bun and the top of the bun. So we're going to make sure to go around it, make everything super nice. And now we get to test our weight paint. Fun. So we're going to go to our armature, go into pose mode. We're gonna wiggle this bone. Whoa! We missed a step! Yay! We're gonna clear the transforms. This is the step I keep forgetting. So, like most things, when you edit the position, when we create our armature, we have to make sure to, in object mode, apply all. I am so bad at forgetting to apply all. Okay, back to pose mode. You'll notice when we don't wiggle the whole thing. When we wiggle the bone that we have selected here, it no longer makes the mesh go crazy. We've got gapping here. There's an easy way to fix that. I'm gonna go into our bun. I'm gonna go into edit mode. Gonna select everything. Mesh, merge by distance. It removed any vertexes that touched each other. Now, what are you doing? There's something weird it's doing with the normals. I just have to remember exactly where. There. Clear the custom split normals data. That looks a lot more like our hair. And even if we go into the textured version, it still looks like it should. By making sure that the vertexes are merged on just the piece that will be moving together, you'll notice we go back into our pose mode, and now you don't get the gapping. So it's a bun, it won't need to move much. Just the fact that it moves at all is more a novelty than anything. But there are some parts where it doesn't look super pretty. But that's where we go back to our weight paint mode and we just blur until they look nice. It's as easy as that. It really honestly is as easy as that. But this is just the bun, which now we can, clear user transforms. Doesn't matter what's selected. Now that we've completed that, we can get rid of that. So let's start, and we'll go from most bones to least bones. So let's start working on our bangs next. We'll use our right bangs. So let's hide everything that's immediately surrounding these, this particular strand of hair. We'll even hide the other part of the bangs. So we can focus on just this. So once again, we move into weight paint mode. We go down here. We add our 3 vertex groups this time. Root, if you remember, it was bangs R1 and R2. So if you don't name them exactly the same, you're gonna have a bad time. You're gonna be confused why it's not auto-normalizing correctly. You're just going to, in general, be very confused. So, first things first, the part that touches the scalp, you want to make sure that the only weight paint on that is the root bone. Otherwise, your hair is gonna wiggle and you're gonna have bald spots on your girl, and that's not good. So otherwise, you want a little bit of overlap between the bones. I wanted to redo that entirely because it just didn't seem nice down here to me. And then blur, auto-normalize, start from the root, and you work your way down until you have a nice looking gradient. That gradient part is especially the key to making sure that you have smooth hair motion. So, and each time that you go through and you wanna, check your pose mode. Make sure you're grabbing the right bone and just giving it a bit of a wiggle. If you notice, we get some weird crimping. We don't want that. So let's pose it where it's crimped and go back, and sometimes clicking on the area that's crimped weirdly really is what helps smooth it out. If you notice, we get these gaps again. This is probably going to be something that we have to do for the whole hair. So let's pose rest position. Bangs R. So let's just go and in edit mode for all the parts. Let's unhide everything and just kind of go around like we did when we named, and select all toggle. Is it M? Yeah. M by distance. Once again, custom split normals data. When you notice something like this comes up, it's honestly way easier just to deal with it all at once by going through and just going through methodically. We can actually do MB for merge by distance. So I'm literally going A8. Sorry, I've got edit mode. A8MB, and then just going clicky over here. The only things I actually have to click on are edit mode. 8MB, click, select edit mode A8MB. Bam! Now we don't have to worry about that again. Let's go back to posing. Getting rid of things that we don't need. Right now, at least. Actually, let's remove everything. That way it's not distracting us. So. Pose position. It's still a little... If you notice, there isn't the individual pieces lifting up in the middle anymore, though, and that's really what we wanted to merge our vertices to get rid of. But I really don't suggest merging vertices until you've separated out the parts that you want to weight paint individually, mostly because you're going to be merging vertices together between parts that you're going to end up separating. And that doesn't always give you the effects that you want, as well as you're not going to be able to use Control L nearly as easily on individual strands. So use that with caution. Make sure you know exactly what you're doing when you use that function. If you notice, the root paint is starting to really get low down here. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Remember, the thing that we want most is just that it's going to be smooth. So I'm actually going to go back here and draw and just remove it right here. Make sure that it's not on anything but the root. That is something that is absolutely necessary once again. So I'm just gonna blur a little bit. But notice I'm keeping that area free of any weight influence that isn't the root. Back to pose. Pose mode. Wiggle this bone a little now that we've tested the wiggling of this bone. And that's looking pretty good for the most part. We could probably adjust the weight paint down here a little nicer. Just plicky plicky. Wiggle wiggle. And voila. Okay. Nice and smooth weight paint. We can go back to our pose mode, clear use of transforms, and move on to the next piece. Really, that's the workflow. You're gonna go through, add your vertex groups. Root. This one's bangs L1 and bangs L2. You're gonna hit up weight paint mode. You're gonna draw your swaths. Oop. It's being a bro for me because I did not have the right part selected. Oh, and I still have 0 weights on. Starting at the root usually is my best bet. Then just working my way down in swaths, making sure I'm overlapping just a little, and running the blur tool over it with auto normalize on. That we want to avoid. There we go. Now it's right up at the top. We want that now. Don't know why it did that, but it did. Now we can blur the rest of the way. It's okay if the weight paint influence on your on some of your bones is weaker than the root and the end bone. That's just going to happen. So let's go here. Back to our armature in pose mode and do a wiggle. Wiggle and a clicky clicky, a clicky clicky, a clicky clicky, clicky clicky. I sing to the tune of my royalty-free music. Over here, I can actually just blur it out. And then, bam, that's looking real smooth. That is exactly what we want. Then we just keep going until we're done. So obviously I am waiting until we really get to the back, because the back has, instead of just 3 bones it's got to worry about, it's going to be 4. That way you can kind of really see. So this is bangs. Nope. We start with the root. Always start with the root. it'd be really funny if I had a really long center bang. That way I could have bang C4. I doubt that's ever going to happen unless I'm doing something really, really complicated. So let's make sure that we're actually drawing weight paint, starting with root. My auto-normalize is still on. We don't want that! That makes it really hard for us to do the overlapping stuff. Oh, yes. Nice and smooth. Smooth jazz. So that means that we have already, and I haven't been recording for very long. Only, what, just about an hour now? We already have all of this done. So, I'm gonna say this is a perfect place for me to pause for part 1. Don't want things to be too long now for each individual video. I will see you again in part 2.